Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today on the podcast we have Sarah Panus. Did I say that correctly?
You sure did.
Awesome. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah. And today, this is an interesting topic for me because I think I do this kind of naturally, but I've never really seen it kind of broken out as, kind of a table topic, so to speak. So I want to talk about empathy plus data-driven brand storytelling. And what does that really mean?
Yeah. So what does it mean, right? There's two factors to it. A lot of times people will think about like the emotional or like that piece of like, how do you connect heart to heart, mind to mind? That's where that's the empathy piece. But then data is really important too, because in my experience, when you pair the two, that's the sweet spot. So of what you know to focus on for your brand storytelling plans, because that's what you know is going to best resonate with your audiences, which if it resonates, it's going to drive better results, and better results lead to whatever it is that you're looking for your goals, whether it's just, engagement or leads or sales as you pull people down the funnel. So what I found, from a brand storytelling perspective, just brand storytelling in general is so essential right now for all of our brands because it is such a competitive field. There's so much clutter online, right? And so how do we become like that thumb stopper for our audiences as they're scrolling online to get them to actually want to connect with us, to get them to want to buy from us or volunteer with us if we're a service-based organization versus someone else. And so Stanford did this great study and they found that storytelling is 22 times more memorable than facts and figures alone. And I really think that brands are like the new editor-in-chief. I really do, because traditional newsrooms have been shrinking, and corporate newsrooms, if you will, like brand storytelling teams with internal content production groups, are growing. Corporations have, they have the budgets, they have the resources, they have the teams, they can partner with external media partners to create all this content, and so they can scale and reach a lot of people. So my experience, the last 20 years, most of my career has been on the corporate side and serving corporations. And so I've just been seeing this grow. And I'm like, there's such a opportunity for brands to be able to help a lot more people and to serve them, in a way that will help them, which will just lift everyone up, right? If we're all just helping, whether that's through information or education or actually physically helping with our product can help solve the problem, that they're having in that way. So what I started doing then with my career through the years, I started in PR and then I led social and influencer marketing and SEO and content marketing strategy and all the things. They've all just mashed together now, where brand storytelling is really my passion because I've seen it personally drive leading ROI of all paid media in a paid plan. And it's amazing, like a 3-to-1 ROI at least. 7xing engagements because you are connecting. It's not just hey, buy this now, sale, or hey, here's a fact that any of our other competitors can also say, and then they're going to forget about you. It's what's the story that you could weave in that applies? So to your question then about empathy and data, I know I wanted just to kind of level set us there for a second. But with empathy and data, then how do you go about doing it? Well, I think about it as kind of our bodies need 3 things to really flourish and be healthy. We need sleep, exercise, and nutrition, food, right? We need those 3 things. So I think about brand storytelling plans with the same way, which is there's 3 things, and I call it my F.E.D Method, which is F.E.D. So the F stands for focus, E is empathy, and D is data. So I've created this model. Is it okay if I walk you through kind of what each step entails? Okay.
Yeah, please do.
So with the F then, with focus, this is really being able to focus and hone in on what are those big storytelling pillars that matter to your brand the most, to your brand and to your customers the most. What should you pay the most attention to? This is a really easy one to get sidetracked on when you're in an organization, because a lot of people are coming at you with a lot of different things they want you to talk about. Oh, that's interesting. Or your competitor starts talking about something. You're oh, maybe we should have been talking about that too. You can have the shiny grass is always greener type of thing. So when you have very clear, established, my recommendation is 3 brand storytelling pillars. They're overarching umbrellas that all of your stories are going to align to. And they're informed, as I'll talk through kind of these empathy filters and data. It's going to inform the 3 pillars you want to talk about. But the easiest way to think about it, Mike, is pretend you're a magazine. And so, you see a magazine on a shelf. Every magazine has a theme. So if you say as your brand, you're yep, we are X magazine and we talk about X, Y, and Z. Like that's your 3 storytelling pillars, you know? So that gets you really honed in. And what that does is it gives you a ton of sanity at work because you can say no to the things that don't make sense, or you can modify ideas until they do make sense. So from my perspective, focus on those 3 storytelling pillars, those 3 buckets. That's the first step that will help you just be a lot smarter in how you build your plans together. And then you want to get into like, I talk about being a content investigator. So this is where like empathy, E stands for empathy filters. Empathy filters is a phrase that I just made up, but it essentially is like helping identify like what are those things that do connect heart to heart and mind to mind. And so this is where you got to do like a lot of listening. And there's different places you can do the listening, which I'll share some examples when we get into the data piece. But like with empathy, when I talk about it, I talk about cognitive empathy, which is literally like we can be better communicators if we try to understand like how our audience is feeling or what they may be thinking. It doesn't mean we're empaths that we like know exactly what they're thinking. I'm not talking about being mind readers, but I am talking about like having the ability to try to be open to like understanding what they're feeling more. And that will get us a lot more, it'll help us humanize our brain and help us not be as cold and help us create topics that make sense. So there's 4 different types of empathy filters. There is data informed empathy. So this is an example of like if you see 46% of our audience has high school students living at home with them. So like, okay, that's a fact. You know, they're parents, they have high schoolers. That's a data empathy filter. You're starting to get into their mind a little bit. The next one then is like SEO informed empathy filter. So this is when you're looking online and you're seeing, okay, well, we see like a huge volume of people are searching for that they need help on how to talk to their teenager at home. Like they want like how to better communicate with them, right? So now you're seeing, okay, they have them, but there are also maybe some communication issues going on. Then there's human informed empathy filters. And this is like those shared feelings we can all relate to with each other, or at least a big swath of people can relate to. So like my favorite one is when I talk about how inevitably when I'm at the grocery store, I always seem to pick the longest checkout line. Like I just always do, and it's so frustrating when you're like, geez Louise, I thought I picked the shortest one, and then all around you're moving faster and you get into that one. Or I saw like Spotify did a great ad campaign or a content campaign around this whole thought where they had an insight of how so many people they wait to get out of the car until the really great song has finished. They're like, oh, epic song, I'm staying in the car, I'm not, you know. And so they had this hilarious like comedy driven bit where all these different scenarios where you really should get out of your car, but they're like, nope, I'm just gonna wait. You know, so that was like, that's a human informed, like just our human emotions. And then the last one is nostalgia informed, and nostalgia, incredibly powerful. As I know you've heard you talk about that. And nostalgia is in general, like it's shared feelings of and experiences that we've all gone through together. So COVID's a great example. We're all going through something as huge as a global pandemic, but it also can be growing up in the same decade and having the same cartoon that you really liked or the same favorite toys that you really liked. It's why like you see all these remakes that Netflix is bringing back, all these remakes of shows we used to watch when we were kids, because we're like, yeah, Cobra Kai, right? Like Cobra Kai is so exciting because you want to see Karate Kid grown up and like what's going on with Danny LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence, right? So that's nostalgia marketing, right? But that's nostalgia informed empathy filters because you're tapping into those. So that's like the 4 different types of empathy filters. So that's focus and empathy. And then the D stands for data. So this gets into then the pairing, because what I've found is it's really hard in a corporate setting to make decisions purely based on the emotions that you're seeing. You need to have some data to back it up as well for 2 things, because 1, it's a lot easier to explain it to other people in your organization. If you're trying to share a concept or an idea, you can't really argue with a lot of facts. If you see like a big chunk of data that's showing certain people are talking about the thing, it just validates. But as like a communicator yourself, as a content professional, it takes the guesswork out of it. Like you kind of remove some of your bias maybe too, that you may not know, or you have unintentional bias, but you can then look at it objectively to say, okay, I'm seeing this emotion, I'm hearing this emotion, I'm seeing this continually in different places online, but then also we have some data to like pair with it. And
Yeah.
this is like a sweet spot. This really does feel like something we should be focusing on. So that's why I love pairing both empathy and data, because it's going to help you sell in your ideas better. It's going to help you grow your budgets faster and do your campaigns, but then also just takes the guesswork out of it, because who likes to guess when we're doing our jobs, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of different places you can gather data. So I can kind of share some of my places, but I'll stop for a second. I know I've been rambling for a long time. Any follow-up questions on any of that, Mike, or do you want me to get into my data sources?
No, what I think I would add to that for anybody listening that's like, oh my God, that makes sense, whatever. I'm going to add my 2 cents, and then I'd like your reaction to it. But I think what a lot of people forget is that I agree with what you're saying. I think empathy is important. I think data is important, but I think they have to come to the discussion prepared with a few things. I think they have to bring authenticity to it. I don't think, I mean, and I see it with my own clients. I see it with other companies where they're manufacturing empathy and it's not coming from a true place, which it can be done, but the wheels will come off at some point. People might see through it. You might find yourself kind of down a road that you're not necessarily all that vested in because it didn't come from an authentic place. So that's important, is to really think about, if we're going to craft these plans, craft these directions, if we're going to be empathetic, if we're going to do these things, if we're going to create that story, as much as you can possibly muster, it needs to come from an authentic place so that you can easily manufacture it, stick to the plan. You just know where the source is, that's really important, because otherwise, I think, like I said, if it's manufactured empathy, then it's not real empathy. Like, you won't be able to sustain it that way. The other thing is you have to be intentional. I think a lot of, I think data is important. I think having a plan is important. I think storytelling is important, but you have to be intentional connecting those dots. You have to be intentional on how you craft that message. I do see companies from time to time, and I've worked with companies that we just do business this way, and then we write the story how we write the story based on how we're running our business. And it's like, okay, but it actually starts before that. Like, you have to go into the business with kind of a direction, a plan, a culture, a voice, a story. And then that's how your business stays on path. That's how you craft that narrative for who your brand is. And then intentionally, you then can look at the data, you can look at the reactions, you can listen to your customers, and you can kind of know where this is coming from because I crafted the story. Like, that's a huge, important step in the process. But again, I've seen it the other way, where it's like, we're going to let the story write itself based off of how we do business. And it's like, but that's not necessarily being intentional and driving it. You have no control. Like, at that point, you're just waiting for something to happen, and how you navigate that minefield is kind of, that's your plan, and it doesn't work that way. So that said, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think data is important. I think it's all great stuff, but I think it comes down to the company, the brand, the individual, or, maybe their ability to trust people like us to get them there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think so. I focus on editorial storytelling. So I'm talking like upper funnel, like adjacencies to like your like brand that can attract and pull those people in. So you're 100% right. Like, you need to believe, like, if you look at the empathy and the data insights and it doesn't align with how your company thinks or what you believe, then that's not going to be something you're going to talk about. Don't fake it, like, right, to your point, because it's going to not come across as authentic, and it's just not going to align with who you are as a brand. You got to find like that like nice sweet spot between like your brand values and what you want to talk about, and then also what the audience is caring about. It's that intersection.
I would even take it as far as, though, with the intention is that, I mean, I've been in situations where people are like, hey, we want you to break down the data. And I go, beautiful, we can do that. What efforts intentionally have you put into SEO, into your copy, your keywording, that kind of thing? And when the answer is 0, then my answer is, well, I don't know if it's a good idea for us to go off that data, because we didn't put any effort into what got us those numbers. We're just basically looking at the after effect, the aftermath of having done nothing. Not that
Yeah,
there isn't, like, we can look at it. I just wouldn't put a lot of stock into it if you didn't intentionally
totally.
craft it that way. I agree with all of it. So, like, I'll keep reiterating that, but it's really important that before they do that, they understand where the numbers come from, why the numbers matter, why some numbers matter more than others, depending on what you've put into it. Like, it's really a big animal, and you got to start at the beginning sometimes. And I know that, if they work with somebody like me, you, whatever, they're going to get that. But I think when they're starting from zero and they're like listening to this podcast thinking, wow, that makes a lot of sense, I'm going to run back to my office and start running reports. Hold on. Like, you got to look at those numbers through a certain lens is all I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. You need to have your foundation, which for me, from an editorial storytelling, your foundation is rooted in like those 3 storytelling pillars. Like, what is it you really care about and you want to talk about? You're 100% right, Mike. Like, if you start looking, I mean, there's a lot of data. That's a challenge with data. There's always so much of it. How do you know what to look at and what to put weight in? So you have to have that filter of like how much weight you put on one source versus another. It's a good segue then. Like, I can talk about more about the data sources I look at for editorial storytelling and where you can look to, because you mentioned SEO. Like, SEO is actually one of my favorite places to look initially for SEO for editorial insights. And so when I look for SEO data, I'm not looking at any branded information. I'm actually looking at, well, if your topic is related around, well, it's like Sleep Number. I worked at Sleep Number for over 12 years, right? So sleep was a big topic, health and well-being, and questions related around those things. Nothing about the brand. We're just like curious. What are people even just asking or saying about sleep? And so you gain a lot of great insights in these long tail phrases that people are searching in. And in my experience editorially is when you lean in on some of those SEO topics for your actual like headline of a blog post as an example, those articles and those pieces have always been in like the top 10 performing best content of the year for me, because I think SEO is it's just like a huge focus group online of all these people, searching stuff in. So you can get like some initial, very high level insights.
The trick is you got to do something with it. Like,
yeah,
SEO is fantastic. And if you study SEO, it'll give you the answers, really. Like, it'll tell you where to go. You have to take it upon yourself to connect whatever you're learning from an SEO perspective to how does this connect to my brand? Does it keep me authentic? Yes. If you can do that, SEO it'll just show you the path. But you gotta do that. You gotta react to it. You gotta do something with it is kind of the big thing. A lot of people get SEO results back, and if it doesn't match what they think it should, like, just something stupid is most of my audience is males. Well, not according to the numbers. Well, that can't be right. It is right. That's the part they have to get over themselves and what they think is right. Listen to the numbers and then keep going. Dig in further. Steer into that. Trust that. Because to your point, when you do, you will see better results.
Yes. And I love, so answerthepublic.com is a great free tool. So anyone listening, like watching that, you're not you don't have to be an SEO expert initially to do this top level research or partnering with your SEO agency partners to ask. But I love answerthepublic.com or keyword.io. I think keywordtool.io. I might have that wrong. But those are 2 really great free resources to look for SEO, just editorial storyline insights around your 3 storytelling pillars. So essentially what you're trying to do with your data is you're pulling all of your internal insights with external sources. So SEO is one of those external. Social listening is another one, like people in your community, what's the vibe that you're getting, what are they saying, but also from like other communities online, like what is that? Great example, like when I was working with Sleep Number at the start of COVID, I was in a bunch of different mom Facebook groups and just kept hearing and seeing over and over and over again, like the same sentiment of like mom guilt on steroids, really. And it was just like, because as parents, it was so hard, obviously going through everything with COVID and your kids are home but I just kept seeing everywhere of like, oh, I know I should be doing this, but I just don't have the time. And how do I do this? Like should. It was like shouldas everywhere. And so we created this content series called Stop Shooting Yourself. Stop Shooting Yourself.
Mm.
And it was all around like the importance of taking care of yourself and health and well-being. And it tied back with Sleep Number then in terms of like just sleep, how something is like simple, but also sometimes hard as sleep. But like, that's like a great way to just like give back to yourself. And like, no matter what happens during the day, leave the dirty dishes, go to bed. Like, you know, it was things like that. And we had first person stories of moms talking about it. So it's very human and connecting and just showing like, and again, it's not like promoting the product. The product wasn't the hero. Sleep was the hero, but their product is what helped. Then they have all this great research on all of their beds are smart beds, and they have sleep tracking. And they show like how you get like a half an hour more of quality sleep every night when you sleep on a sleepier bed. Like, so that's where you could get into those nuances or their stats. But the hero was the people, right? So that came from social listening as an example. You can look at like paid media results of like what's working, what's not in your paid campaigns, internal insights. Like I said, like hopefully you have some great insights on your existing customer base, employee feedback. I love customer loyalty programs. So if you have a loyalty program and you can mine them for polls, questions, or just see like what they're saying back in that like private community, that's like a gold mine because there are already people who've converted and are already with your brand. So how do you find more of those people and connect with more of those people? Website traffic analytics, if you have good analytics to kind of understand what people are looking at and staying with, as well as like if you don't have those things, there's tons of third-party partners you can commission, you know, studies through to understand more about your industry or your audience or your agency partners. Like, what are they finding? They have a lot of great data. So it's really just putting your content investigator hat on and mining all of those sources, which sounds like a lot, but it's the first step is really just reaching out to ask for all those things, or starting to make time to just plot on your calendar if you're the person who's going to pull those things, just to say, okay, well, I'm going to tackle SEO this today, and I'm going to check out answerthepublic.com. Like, as an example, like you just at least making those steps so you can start to pull those things together. And then you're looking for that intersection of, you know, the focus areas with the empathy filters and those data insights. And that sweet spot in the middle are the things you should focus on editorially talking about first.
Yeah, just to kind of throw the perspective on it, it doesn't always convert directly to sales either. You know, there's steps in this process. You have to build this foundation like we've been talking about. You have to go into it with intention. You have to connect the dots from what the research tells you to what's possible, the authenticity, all those things. And you kind of alluded to it, but you know, maybe everybody's going to be a little different, but maybe one of the next steps is building that audience. I need to find my circle of people that are my people. And then once I can consistently get my arms around that, I can find where those people are. I've got a little sense of control. Now I can start marketing to them in this way and that way. And oh my God, then it connects to sales. And like, just know that there's steps in that process. And why I say that is because I have these conversations all the time where people are like, so if I give you $500, what does that mean for my sales? Probably nothing. Because we got a long ways to go before I can tether myself to the sales of. We've got some work to do. And that perspective and understanding how all this works is important. But it's also understanding that it's so doable. It's going to be a little different for every company, every industry, you know, whatever, but it's so doable. So like to your point, you know, start that SEO process. It's probably going to suck right away. It's probably going to be like, oh my God, this is such a huge task. But the more you do it, the more you kind of gain a sense of understanding and control. It might start at 8 hours a week to start with, or a month, however you want to do it. But when you get it all figured out, you're going to be spending an hour a week on it, and you're going to have that foundation, and you're going to start to understand where to find those numbers, which ones are moving the needle and which ones come easy to you. But it's about starting the process. It's a big animal. Like SEO is, I think it's one of those industry terms that's been thrown around so much that people now use it as leverage in discussions with people like us, because they want to throw it at us. Like, what's your stance on SEO? Well, I don't know. What's your stance on SEO? Because that's what really matters before I even answer the question. But what are your thoughts on that and kind of helping people understand what an animal this is?
Totally. So, editorial brand storytelling for your brand is an upper funnel and mid funnel tactic. So I talk about it as if you think about the traditional funnel, and I know we all know like people bounce around the funnel and it's not like clearly linear step 1, step 2, step 3 to conversion. But if you just think about it like a funnel, brand storytelling helps attract those upper funnel leads that are eventually going to convert lower funnel. I've seen it firsthand, so that's just not a blanketed statement I'm saying, but it takes time. It's not an overnight conversion. So I think what I would say is there's a great model called brand overnight versus brand over time. So this is how I would think about it to answer that. This is why I would answer that question is you need both types of content in your funnel all the time. So brand over time is like that overarching brand storytelling really fits up in here. So it's over time, it's longer, it's evergreen, it's feeding, it's constantly attracting and getting people to come on in. So this could be some great brand storytelling videos or blog content or podcast episodes or infographics or social content, things like that, right? They're upper funnel. But then brand overnight, that's your spikes, like up, down, that are happening underneath brand over time, where those are your sales, your promos, those are your things where you're getting these upper funnel people that are like have moved down and they're a little bit more interested in you. They trust you. They're excited. They want to convert. They want whatever your conversion is eventually. But like you need both. So you can be short-sighted as an organization. If you cut off the upper funnel, you're gonna like literally like strangle the lead funnel. Like eventually, right? You're running out of people to talk to because they're not going to be engaged with your brand. There's only so many times, even the most, like I say about this, like I think about like a brand that I love. There's only so many times I'm going to want them to like send me sale information. It's going to get really annoying, even though I love them and they're great and I bought from them, or maybe I volunteer, or I donate to them. But good Lord, stop sending me emails or things just to say sale, or volunteer, right? We have to add value back to that customer. We have to give them a reason to want to engage and to want to share our content. We have to give them a way to want to like build that loyalty and trust over time with us. And that's where storytelling comes in. You need both.
Yeah. And it's really about, you're studying the customer, you're learning the customer, you're trying to navigate those paths to create and increase engagement, those kinds of things. But you also need to study yourself in the process and know when, did that sale land flat because the sale sucked, it wasn't a high enough incentive, or was it because it was the 20th email I've sent in the last week?
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta look in the mirror too when you do this stuff, and that's it's hard to do sometimes, but I think those who can kind of get in that mindset of reading the numbers and relating it back to what we're intentionally doing and how we're kind of creating the effect, you'll be so much better off. And when in doubt, test it. Run an A/B test, run a different series of solicitation type marketing emails to figure out which one performs the best. It's a big animal, but I think starting with, to your point, I think starting with, the authenticity, the brand, the storytelling, the empathy, if you can craft kind of your foundation from that, you'll see a much better success rate, and you'll gain some understanding as to who you're talking to, which is the customer.
100%. I mean, email is such a powerful tool, but a lot of brands just make it so icky and awful because they just are promo all the time. And I've seen this firsthand, and I've seen it can be as simple as, okay, you put your emails in the promo for all the time, and you're the email team, and you're like, dang, it's really hard to try to get anything else into our emails because leaders don't want us to. Get at least, you put one editorial story in there, put one like something too, like, and I've seen this over time, like actually work, where then you'll start to see your open rates or your click rates increase because they're actually going to be like, oh, that's an interesting headline, like article. I want to click on that and read that on your brand blog. As an example. Or you work with influencers, share some of their content. Like there's so many different ways that you can infuse that. They can work hand in hand. And that's my whole thing. I would just say, right, Mike, is like, it doesn't have to be black or white. They have to work together. And I think it's one of the things I'm really curious to see what happens into next year, in the economy we're in right now with the recession. A lot of brands are doing budget cuts. They're starting to scale back. They're getting a little leaner, right? And the brands that completely take a knee jerk and like cut off that brand over time and just focus on brand overnight, promo sales, because we got to like get something in it. They may see a short-term gain, definitely, because those promo things can work. Heck yeah. But long-term, they don't. They're going to start to then, a few months from now, 6 months, 4 months, 3 months, however their cycle is, they're going to be like, oh, our leads are all down. And they have to start building that pipeline back up again. They're just going to drain the pipeline, and then sales are really going to be down. And then everybody panics. So my advice is like, don't be so knee jerk, like in times that are tougher for economically, if your industry is feeling that right now too, because you will literally hurt yourself worse down the road if you cut off the ability to attract those people.
You have to have a reference point. Like that's,
yeah.
I talk about, I'm going to overuse the word intentional again, but you have to be intentional in what you're doing so that when it works or doesn't work, you have a reference point to say, hey, that worked, or that sort of worked. What if I did this? You always come back to kind of a place where you left off that potentially could put you on the right path, or that didn't work at all. I'm just not going to do that again. But if you're not intentional, you don't know. Like I see this even in projects sometimes, somebody on the team will come to me and say, hey, I did X, Y, and Z and it broke. Okay, well, what did you do to break it? Well, I did about 1,000 things. Okay, did you write them down? Do you know where you left off? Do you know which ones worked or which ones didn't, or which ones didn't break it? Nope, I just tried 1,000 things and now it doesn't work. Okay, well, now that leaves us absolutely nowhere because I have no visibility as to what worked, what didn't, how we got here. And that's just a huge component of it. And I'm just going to throw this in because I think it's important. And if you disagree with me, tell me.
Okay.
But as you craft these plans, as you try to navigate the climate or the landscape of your industry, whether it's because of the recession or COVID or whatever it is, as much of your plan, if it's steeped in authenticity and it just matches who you are and who you are as a company, and you go out there with just transparency on what you're doing in the market, you're going to be 80% there all the time. You never have to second guess yourself. You never have to wonder. And then it's the remaining 20, 30, 40%, whatever it is. That's where you can use the marketing tactics. That's where you can run sale events. That's when you can, you leverage your, maybe it's your email campaigns, those kinds of things. But if you start at a very authentic, accurate place, it's going to be easier. Like you're just not going to have to overthink it because you know who you are. And it's easy to teach. I'm going to throw that in there too. When you're bringing people on, when you hire somebody like Sarah, I don't have to manufacture an explanation as to who I am because it's right there in front of me.
100% agree. You know who does this really well? I mean, there's so many brands that are doing this really well. But one of my recent faves right now is Red Wing Shoe Company. And they're a Minnesota-based company. It's where I am as well, but obviously a global company. They are and I had their global creative director on my podcast to share some really cool examples of that they've been doing with brand storytelling. But he was sharing, and I see it over and over again. They have this new campaign right now. They are so authentic to like what they believe. I mean, they have their beliefs. They're authentic to it in every single thing they do. So they're all about, they're over 100-year-old company. It's 113 years old or something. Their boots last for a very, very long time. So they're super high quality. And they're very much about, their roots are really rooted in like blue collar workers who are wearing their shoes, welding or farming or being at construction or things like that. That's how they started. And so from their origins, everything they've done, they've been like, we are US based. We're not going to go overseas. Like they were talking about when it was popular for everything to go overseas. They were like, nope, we're going to stay by the banks of the Mississippi in Red Wing, Minnesota and like handcraft our boots. But they have this new campaign right now, Mike. I don't know if you've seen it. It's so smart. It's called Same Old. And everything about the campaign has been like repurposed. The ads are all like old ads through the years that they've like mashed together. But they're doing this whole like upcycling of actually reselling people's old Red Wing boots. So like there's like some really vintage ones, like all the way up to like some more recent ones. and it's called Same Old. But it like goes to their roots of like, they're like really anti-fast fashion. They're like, no, like we buy these and they last you a long time. And they show that, and they're tapping into this whole trend right now of upcycling and buying shoes and consignment and clothes, and like how many more people are doing that for multiple reasons. But I just love it. I think it's so smart. And then when I saw that come on after talking with the creative director, I was like, oh, it's just so true to like who they are, because they're anti-fast fashion. They're pro like, working Americans and like, that whole story. For Labor Day one year, they closed all of their stores for sales, and they opened them up because there was, such a labor shortage. So Labor Day, so they were like, all of their stores were open as like staffing, like employment staffing places where people can come in and look for jobs. Whether it was with Red Wing or elsewhere. So it's so cool, right? They're like so authentic to who they are. And so that's when you find your right people. As a brand though, I get how that can be kind of scary sometimes, where you worry to niche in like that and you'll be excluding some, and especially if you're worried about sales. But like, that's how you find your people. As any business owner will say, like, you have to like niche in on your right people. It's why REI has such a huge following, and Dove Beauty has such a big following, and Patagonia, like, whether you agree or disagree with like their beliefs and things, they're very authentic to who they are and what they believe, and they're open about it. And they're like, if we're not for you, we're not for you, but like, this is us. And that helps people figure out these brands that they feel really passionate about.
Right. And I think the fear sometimes for these brands is that they're going to miss sales. That could be a thing, but the goal is that you want to replace the wrong sales with the right sales.
So that. Yeah.
If you build your community, your tribe, whatever it is, with the right people, you'll never miss a sale. And not only that, but you will create the brand loyalty. These people will be your cheerleaders. They're going to blow you up on social because they love what they love. Like, you don't have to work so hard. And I know that I'm making it sound way easier than it is, but I think this idea is of a cash grab. Like, I just want all the customers. I just don't think that's the case anymore. You don't want all the customers. I don't want the wrong ones. I don't care if they're paying. I want the right ones, and I want more of the right ones. I'll take 10 of the right ones over 20 of the wrong ones all day long, because those wrong ones come with baggage. They're going to come with, they're not helping you, So I think it's a mindset. And again, I'm making it sound way easier than it is, but it's something to think about as business owners, as brands, as anybody that's trying to cultivate this audience and this this tribe of people. So
definitely. And that's where like empathy and data informed brand storytelling will help just tie that all on a nice little bow. Right? Like, it helps you remember like what you're talking about, what you care about, in a way to like connect with your audiences. That's why it's so important.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Sarah, thank you for being on the podcast. I think this has been awesome. And yeah, if you can't tell, I like talking about brands. So
yeah, no, me too. So we're both in the same space. I love it. This was great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
If you'd like to learn more about CyberDogs, share your thoughts, or even ask a specific question about this episode and or the brand retro mindset, contact me directly at mike@cyberdogsmarketing.com.